And we continue in week 8, our final week here in the Jonah Building of Capital Outlook with Senate President Drew Perkins and the Speaker of the House, Steve Harshman. Gentlemen, thanks again for coming.
We're glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
What's the legacy of this legislature? What would you tell me?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think, President Perkins and I think and myself, we really worked closely together. I think it's been our system is bicameralism, right? It's two houses, and I think we've just diligently worked to push and improve things for our people. It's been an honor to serve, and I think we've done a lot of good stuff. Criminal justice reform is probably the biggest thing of the session that has totally flown under the radar. I think there's lots of education bills from our CTE and the Hathaway to the K-3 reading and many others, virtual education. I think the opioid task force is important. But I think, and I'll stop, but the thing that kind of had sucked all the air out of the room was all this budget talk, and really what we were talking about was less than 1% of our budget. And all that work, that's what bicameral legislatures do, and you don't agree and you come together, and we were within 200,000 of each other. So in the end, it all worked out. The process really works.
Mr. President, what is the legacy of this legislature?
I think the legacy is, in one word, quite successful. Well, that's two words, I guess. Quite successful. In addition to what the Speaker said, I think the damper was some stuff about the lodging tax and the National Retail Fairness Act. And those things took away from what I think there's some really good legislation that came through the session. We both have we don't have as many years of experience as some of the most senior members of our group, but there's been some of the best legislation I've seen in quite a few years. And there's some legislation that's going to make a difference for Wyoming. The ones that the Speaker talked of, but there's some others. There's just off the top of my head, it's not a earth-changing bill, but provides a real lot of dignity. There was one about there's a bill that came in and treats the biological evidence that's taken from sexual assault victims, and treats it with some dignity and respect that people deserve. What they have to go through to have that collected, and that was that was just a great, wonderful bill. There was a simple one of the just resolution to acknowledge women's suffrage, a great celebration of Wyoming, and we look forward to having that. We have, even the U.S. Senate has a resolution with respect to Suffrage Day and recognize Wyoming's part in that. In addition to that, there were a suite of blockchain bills that came through that pushed that envelope down the line. We have people who are coming to look at moving operations and headquarters to Casper because of things not Casper, Wyoming. I don't think they'll be in Casper, wouldn't be my guess, but looking at Wyoming to kick the tires and see if they're ready to move here because of what we've done with blockchain and the advances we've made there. We've done great things on trust. The Chancery Court bill is passed both houses now. We've got, there are some just great pieces of legislation that have gone through. They're going to make a difference for Wyoming. We're working, hopefully we can get the housing bill passed we've got to get that to a conference committee. It's getting to a conference committee, the housing for UW, which will change the face of UW, create 2,000 replacement beds for students to be there, which is the number one priority of that university. There's a lot of things that have been done here to move the state forward. And when people are going to reflect back, and I think people are reflecting back, it's been a very successful legislative session.
I do want to visit. The budget did take the air out of this session a little bit, but so did the revenue bills that you considered. And I do want to talk about those a little bit. You two disagreed in the end on lodging tax. That's one bill that many thought that would move forward in this legislature. And both of you talked repeatedly about the need for Wyoming to modernize its tax structure. That was a major emphasis at the start of the session. And big hurdles for this legislature. Mr. Speaker, those bills start with you. What is the mood going forward with Wyoming's revenue needs relative to revenue bills?
Well, I think our revenue needs, I think for the meantime, I think obviously we cross our fingers and hope for good oil prices. Wyoming oil near 60, and we'll be in good shape, I think, and strong investment returns. And and I think that'll happen. We're hopeful. We really are. And so, but those things are a little bit out of our control. And I think the ideas that came forward, probably, I think the House probably killed 20 revenue ideas and sent 2 across, really. And we're like every other state. You try to do things where the least impact your people. So lodging tax, sales tax, those all affect everybody in the state of Wyoming. But these ideas, we're really already paying this, I call it an apportionment, really, with this national retail fairness. And but it's an idea. I think the people will drive this right across the state. And as they learn more, and as we get out in our committees, we'll just keep working on these issues, and the people will drive it. But I thought, instead of raising a property tax, I think the House and many senators, instead of raising a property tax on grandma or minerals or business or the homeowner, there's a way to recapture some of those things that it's already apportioned in our products. The other piece, the lodging tax that left the House, and the reason, I think, again, like every state, you try to have non-residents pay most of those bills. That's 80 to 85% is paid by out-of-staters and really non-American citizens who visit our national parks. Half the tax is collected in Teton County. So, I think those ideas are close. They'll probably stick around a while, but I think we'll send our revenue off with some work to kind of look at that. I think we got to continue to kind of ask what kind of state we want in the future, because we are attracting certain groups of people with our tax structure. And I think it'd be a good exercise to, how does Montana tax people? How does North Dakota and South Dakota, states that are similar to us, to pay their bills? And so I think we're not the first legislature, the 65th, to ever deal with this issue, and we won't be the last. So I think it's just an ongoing process.
Mr. President, those 2 bills, about $65 million worth of revenue, perhaps, estimated, came your way, and the Senate decided that now's not the time. So the question is that when you look at the future and you look at those, how to study, what else do we need to learn, and how do we need to learn it?
Well, I think when you do that, part of it is simply education, both education of the public as well as education of legislators. I personally worked hard to try and get the votes I needed to get the National Retail Fairness Act out and successfully passed through the Senate. I got close, but I didn't quite get there. I think that as I talked with people individually about what that bill did, the response in the end was, yeah, why wouldn't we do that? Wyoming citizens are already paying this. These are, when you look, if you go back in our history, these national chains weren't here 30 years ago, and they are here now. And in their national pricing structure, we're already paying this. This is such a not even a blip on the radar. It would not affect prices on a national scale. And so, if we can get past some of the reservations that you've heard in the Senate were about disparate. So I think we can go back and look at that. There may be some ways to resolve the nature of that, and calm some of those fears. But it was a great effort. Representative Obermuller just had worked his tail off on that, and he was excellent. He was right on so many parts of that, and I don't think it's over. I think it's just the beginning.
I want to ask you both, do you both believe without tax reform that economic diversification hurts our state if we're not going to be successful in having tax reform?
Yeah, I think, that debate is, and our former Representative Madden would always point to the numbers on that, because you have to provide those services. And whether it's county, city, your hospitals, your schools, and so on. And I think it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg question. And for me, the answer is probably a little both. I mean, I think you got to have a little economic development, but you also got to work on the other side too.
As you diversify a tax base, you have to diversify in order to take advantage of a diversified economy. But ultimately, if you're not careful about it, you can discourage the diversification of your economy by your tax policy. I think the other thing is important. If you look about this whole issue, if you go to Alaska, they're looking at 25% budget cuts. That state is much more dependent on oil and gas energy revenues than Wyoming is. But there's a little bit of a cautionary tale in that at some point in time, we have to continue to work to diversify. We've got more diverse revenue streams than Alaska does, but that's a cautionary tale about where we need to be looking at in the future.
Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, we talked about an investigation with Senator Lynn Hutchings. Do you have an update for us?
The only update I can give you is we've confirmed with the Wyoming Equality it remains an informal complaint, and so I think that it may very well be referred to a subcommittee of Management Council to see if they believe anything else should be different done. The subcommittee will be the senators who serve on Management Council, but the process remains confidential in accordance with our rules, and we trust the process and we'll work the process.
Is it accurate to say the investigation's ongoing?
Well, I don't know to have an investigation. I think the facts of what was said and how it was said and where it was said, I think those are uncontested by both sides. And so what you're looking at is some other issues and looking how it conforms with Senate rules and of decorum, and we'll see what if anything can be done. I just reiterate that regardless of where people believe, people believe all kinds of things about that, but when you're elected to the legislature or any other office, you don't leave your First Amendment rights alone. They come with you, and you have the right to express yourself. So the question is there a decorum? Is there some other rule that's been violated? Because we don't have a rule against exercising your First Amendment right.
Lastly, on that issue, you told us 2 weeks ago that the public may learn of the results of or any conclusions that might be drawn if Wyoming Equality gives you permission to do that. Have they given you any permission at all?
No, they have not.
Okay. Well, to you both, it's a pleasure to visit with you each week. I think our public appreciates it. I've told you both, I think that many press folks don't have the availability, and I'm not talking just about us, but my colleagues on radio, in online media, and in print, that you give them as far as access is concerned. That availability is much appreciated. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and to all your staff, it's been great. And and I just kind of close and what Senator Perkins is talking about is a citizen legislature. It's the classic that in 7 weeks, we've worked very hard to represent our people, accomplish more work than any other legislature in the country in a shorter time. And I think as a citizen legislature, just in the House of Representatives, I got 3 folks who are battling cancer while they're on the floor. One's buried his mother, another is taking care of his mother, another who is gravely ill, another whose father had a stroke. All these things are life like the rest of Wyoming's living, and we're going to leave here and go back to work Friday. And so we appreciate the opportunity to serve, but I think the Wyoming legislature is a great institution. And we just keep working this process and honoring it, and it'll serve our state well and our people well.
You have the last word, Mr. President.
I just reiterate that it's you come down here, and whether it's this year or another year, I've had grandchildren born during the legislature. I had my father-in-law died during the legislative session. This year we've had a brother-in-law die. We've had Senator rush out because of health issues in their family. We've had broken teeth. We've had flu. We've had colds. All that stuff goes on down here. And most of us will be back at our own jobs either Monday or Tuesday next week.
Speaking of flu, we're glad you're feeling better.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.